So there's two questions that no book lover ever wants to answer. The first one, if you were stuck on a desert island, you know how that one goes. And then the second one is, would you rather reread or only read new things? And most of the people, when faced with those questions, most book lovers are going to tell you, it's too hard to choose, and I'm going to read all of the books, as many as I can. So essentially they answer, I'm going to take quantity over quality. I want to read all of the books. And I resonate with that. I really do. But I also really value quality reading. And so, I am going to propose something completely radical here on Booktube and suggest a challenge. It's kind of a lifetime sort of challenge, and I don't even know if I'm prepared to take this challenge, but the challenge of only reading the same 30 books. Welcome to Pages and Pages. Two of the most brilliant minds I've ever had the privilege to be under the tutelage of were individuals who were huge fans of rereading. One of these people reread The Republic every year, and the other one reread the same 30 books over and over. Both of these people were self-educated and were brilliant, brilliant minds and very well read. They didn't come to this decision lightly. Rereading is so important. The first time you read a book, you're learning the character names, you're becoming acquainted with the place, and you're trying to take in a little bit of the writing style. You're kind of walking into a house for the first time and going, huh, that looks nice. But you're not really taking time to notice the details. That's where rereading comes in. You have to reread if you want to fully appreciate a book. Now, rereading takes time that could be used for reading other books. So a lot of people end up pushing rereading to that list of things they're going to get to someday, and then never end up getting to it because there's so many new things. And the fascination with new in our culture is another thing that maybe needs to be reconsidered. But here we are, rereading the same 30 books. Why would you do that? When I first heard this person say that they only reread the same 30 books over and over, I had that initial shocked reaction of like, what do you mean? Like, there's so many other good books out there. But the longer I've thought about it, the more I've realized that that might be the way to go. Here's 3 reasons, 3 questions I want to ask that I need to explore more to know if I'm going to actually be able to do this or not. And you can ask them too. First thing to consider is that most stories are derivative stories. Most of the books being published today are just retellings in one form or another of a story that's been told 1,000 million times before. So if you can read a source text for a story, or find the place where that story picks up first, then why not read that rather than all of its derivatives, because you're going to be getting it in its most true form. At least you would hope. Perhaps you could say that the retelling is a refining process, and so it's only the most recent retelling. But I think that rather than doing that, I think that since humans are always going to have their own bias, their own slant, their own lens for viewing things, I think that reading the original story, where it's most removed from your present situation, is going to be the most effective way of hearing that story, of reading that story. So that's the first thought, is that most stories are derivative stories, and the question that goes with that is, if you have access to the original source text of a story, why would you read its derivative? If you can answer that question well, then you should probably read the derivative. If you can't find a good answer for it, then you should probably read the source text. The second thought that I've had is that one of the things that makes a book good is that it does stand up to vigorous rereading, where you are able to find a new thought, a new perspective each time you read it. And most of the books that I read, unfortunately, do not hold up to that standard. They fall apart after 2 or 3 readings. And not the books themselves, but the content of the books. You've gotten all you can from that book, and there's not really much else that book can do for you. But a good book continues to grow you and shape you as a person with each rereading, and continues to grow and shape your understanding of the world and how you think about the world with each rereading. So the question I have for this one is, do you read the kind of books that withstand rereading? I like to think that I do, but I also know I don't read enough of them. The third thought I've had is that a good book is a book that divides opinion, where two people can read the same book and come up with two very different ideas about what it's about, or two very different responses where one of them loves it and the other hates it. Most good books have conflict in them, right? But when a book is good enough to create conflict, oh, that is most excellent. It gives us intellectual fodder for further discussion and further thought. It compels us to challenge ourselves and to challenge each other, and that is a good thing, even though it doesn't always feel like it. So those are 3 thoughts I have about why you would go about rereading the same 30 books, and maybe even what kinds of books should possibly be on that list. I've started to compile a list. There are still a lot of question marks after the names of the books on my list. The 30 books that I have chosen, I hope, are things that have shaped my character, but I also want these 30 books to be able to withstand rigorous rereading. There aren't too many books that fill that criteria. So what's on my list of 30? Come on, Paige, you've been talking about it. Give us some answers here. Just so you know, trilogies only count as 1 on my list. The Republic by Plato. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. St. Augustine's Confessions. Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. The Divine Comedy. Athanasius's On the Incarnation. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. C.S. Lewis's Till We Have Faces. Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days. C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. Man Alive by G.K. Chesterton. A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Van Auken. Aquinas. Wordsworth's Prelude. The Iliad. The Lord of the Rings. The Odyssey. Kant, Hume, Descartes, or Machiavelli. One of those. Haven't figured it out. I'd Choose You, a children's book. Anna Karenina. Pascal's Pensée. Hamlet, Macbeth, or Midsummers. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. The Creeds of the Church. Dune. Anne of Green Gables. And then lately I've been thinking about adding some Hemingway. The interesting thing about keeping it as a list of 30 is that you have to consider what's more important than other things. And so there's a lot of things on this list that I've been rereading here that I have crossed out and put something else in there that I feel would better withstand rereading and will have a more lasting longevity for me to still be useful in my life at a later point. But I am very curious as to what you would put on your list of 30, if you would even dare to make a list of 30. And I'm actually even considering committing to a list and just rereading those books for a while to give it a try. What would Booktube look like if we all decided to reread the same 30 books? Not all of us reading the same 30 books, but each having our own 30 books that we would reread. I think our discussions would get stronger, I think there would be an interesting diversity, and I think it would promote a mastery over our subject matter that currently we lack. So that's my idea for a 30-book challenge. I don't even know if I'm up for taking it at this point, but I think down the road I'm going to need to try it, and so I want to know if you'd be willing to do it with me. Thank you so much for watching, have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.